Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It's so wonderful to be with you this morning. I am the Reverend William Levwood, affectionately known as Rev Lev. My pronouns are he and him. We are celebrating our flower communion this morning, so does anybody not have a flower? Raise your hand if you don't have a flower, and we'll have an usher bring it to you. So keep your hand up if you don't have a flower. Most of you have flowers, but we want to make sure everybody has a flower. So raise your hand if you do not have a flower. All right, I think we got everybody. Okay, with that, I invite you, remind you, if you're in person, to make sure you've silenced your phone, and whether you're joining us in person or online, to center ourselves for worship together by taking a deep breath. We open and welcome to the ancestral people of this land, acknowledging that our church, like all of Burke, rests on the unceded territory of the Manahoac tribe of the Great Sioux Nation. We seek healing and the realization of justice with the people of this land, who live on in their descendants, the present-day members of the Monacan Indian Nation, the Patawomac Indian Tribe of Virginia, and the Piscataway Indian Nation. We honor the ancestors as we move toward healing so that all together shall one day know full justice.
Welcome to Accotink Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Christina Watts, and my pronouns are she and her, and I'm happy to be your worship associate today. This congregation is a welcoming and inclusive spiritual home where we inspire each other to live our values. Together, we care in community, grow in spirit, and act for justice. Whether you're a longtime member or a newcomer or something in between, we're so delighted that you decided to join us today. Welcome.
So I invite you now to rise in body or in spirit to join in our chalice lighting words. We've been studying our new proposed UU values this year, so we're going to recite a shortened version of those. In your hymnal, you can find a bookmark. The words will be on the screen, but you can also, this bookmark you can't flip, but you can flip the bookmark. You should be able to flip the bookmark to see the different lines of the words matching the color. Okay? Also, it'll be on the screen. And the first part is only on the screen. In body or in spirit. Rise in body or in spirit. All right, let us recite together. Love is at the center of our Unitarian Universalism. Love is the practice of our living tradition. As Unitarian Universalists, we covenant to help everyone flourish by building accessible and inclusive communities, honor the web of life by protecting Earth and all beings, be beloved community by dismantling racism and all oppressions, cultivate generosity by sharing our faith, presence, and resources, celebrate diversity by embracing our differences with love and respect, transform the world with love by growing together spiritually and ethically. We have a special service today. We're celebrating our flower communion. This comes to us from our Unitarian kin in Transylvania, which is now part of Romania, but is actually of culturally Hungarian. I'm sorry, it doesn't come from Transylvania. It comes from the Czech Republic, from Norbert Čapek. I don't know why I said that other stuff. We do also have Unitarian kin in Transylvania, in Romania. So it comes from Reverend Norbert Čapek, who started the flower communion. He asked his congregation in the spring to bring a flower, each person to bring a flower. So some of you brought flowers, and we also had flowers for you at the beginning. And in a moment, you're going to be able to bring those flowers up and place them in vases. Let's unveil the vases. We covered them up so that nobody accidentally brought their flowers up early. So you'll have an opportunity to bring your flowers up in the vases, and then If you haven't done the flower communion before, I'm going to leave what we do later in the service as a surprise. So for this first part, we're just going to bring up the flowers. So we'll come down the center of the aisle. We'll start at the front and then move to the back. And then if you can go back to your seat this way, flowing around by the outside. Okay? And Brad's going to play some music for us and even have us join in singing later on as we bring up the flowers. So with that, you can begin to bring up your flowers. What a beautiful bouquet. In Unitarian Universalist churches, since the 1980s, we start our church year. So our church year starts in the fall with water communion, and then we conclude our church year in May or June with the flower communion. So I want to say two things about that. One is I just want to point out the way that we dedicate our children in Unitarian Universalism. So the most common way that we dedicate children is to take a rose that we've taken the thorns off of, and we dip it in water, and we touch it to the child's forehead. Maybe it's an infant, maybe it's a 5-year-old, could even be a 10-year-old, and the community is saying that we are going to be there and support the growth and development of this child. So it's striking to me that we have the water and the flower in our child dedication, and we also start with water communion and we end with flower communion. And it occurs to me as well that we often honor the dead with flowers as well. So there's really a connection through the lifespan and through the liturgical year between these two ceremonies. Also, you might notice that we have vases here filled with water. This year at our water communion, we talked about this idea that love is at the center of Unitarian Universalism, and that love, like water, takes many forms to nourish all the amazing diversity of life that we celebrate. So I also see a connection between water communion, where we lift up that oneness of water and that oneness of love at the center that nurtures and nourishes and gives life to the full diversity, which is what we celebrate today with our flower communion. Each of you brought up a different flower of different colors to make this beautiful bouquet of the humanity of this community, of the wondrous diversity of this community. The other thing this year is that we started with our water communion looking at the story of Old Turtle by Douglas Wood. And we're going to end by talking about Old Turtle and the Broken Truth, which is the sequel to that story. So you might remember that in Old Turtle, people are arguing over what qualities are the most important. And in the end, they realize that there is this love at the center, and that all the qualities, all that diversity is important. And we'll hear a variation on that same message today with Old Turtle and the Broken Truth, which we're going to tell the beginning of now.
Old Turtle and the Broken Truth, a story by Douglas Wood, watercolors by John J. Muth.
Once, in a beautiful, faraway land that was somehow not so very far.
A land where every stone was a teacher and every breeze a language, where every lake was a mirror and every tree a ladder to the stars.
Into this far and lovely land there fell a truth. It streaked down from the stars, trailing a tail as long as the sky, but as it fell, it broke.
One of the pieces blazed off through the night sky, and the other fell to earth in the beautiful land.
In the morning, Crow found the fallen piece. It seemed to be a sort of stone, shiny and pleasing to the eye. So he picked it up. "This is a lovely truth," said Crow. "I will keep it." And he carried it away. But after he had held it for a while and examined it closely, Crow said, "This truth does not feel quite right. A part of it is missing. I will look for a whole one." And he flew off and dropped it to the ground.
Other creatures who liked shiny things soon noticed the truth as well. Fox, coyote, raccoon, each picked it up and carried it a while. But they too found that it had rough edges and was difficult to carry, and its sparkle soon lost its appeal. "We do not need this broken truth," they said. "We will find a whole one." Butterfly and bear also discovered the truth, drawn by its sweetness, but each found that it left a bitter taste after all. There is something missing in this truth, they thought, and they left it alone. After a while, none of the creatures even noticed the broken truth anymore, and it lay on the ground, forgotten.
Then a human being found it. He was walking slowly, listening to the breezes. A lot of this story is about listening, so I want to remind people to be quiet so that we can hear the story and everything else in the service. So particularly children in the back, I love that you're already working on our craft, but if you can please zip your lips and stay quiet, because we are listening to the breezes, gazing at the beauties above, below, and all around. When he found the broken truth, and on it was writing, and the writing said, "You are loved." The man held it carefully, thinking it was the loveliest thing he had ever seen. He tucked the broken truth into a safe place and kept it. Sometimes he would take it out to admire it, and the truth sparkled just for him and whispered its message to him alone. And the man thought he had never felt so proud and so happy.
The man took the wonderful truth to his people, those who lived with him, who spoke as he spoke, and dressed as he dressed, and whose faces looked like his. And together they cherished their newfound truth and believed in it. They hugged it to themselves, and it became their most important possession.
After a while, the man and his people did not hear the language of the breezes and stones anymore. They heard only their truth. They did not see the mirrored beauty in the lakes or the ladders to the stars, but saw only their sparkling truth. And for them, it was enough, and they called it the truth.
The truth made the people feel good and proud and strong, but soon they also began to feel fear and even anger toward those who were not like themselves and did not share their truth. The other beings and other people of the lovely land seemed less and less important, and the language of the breezes was hardly ever heard anymore.
Time passed, and other people said, "We must have this great truth for ourselves, for with it comes happiness and power." Many battles were fought, and the broken truth was won and lost over and over again. But such was its power and beauty that no one ever doubted it. And when they were without it, they felt great emptiness where their truth had been. Meanwhile, the stones and the trees suffered, the breezes and the waters suffered, and the animals and the earth, and most of all, the people suffered.
Finally, the animals went to Old Turtle, ancient and wise as the mountains and seas themselves. Crow and fox went, coyote went, raccoon, butterfly, bear, and many others all went to see Old Turtle. This truth the people quarrel over, they said. We have all held it ourselves. It is broken and it does not work. Please tell the people. I am sorry, answered Old Turtle, but the people will not listen. They are not yet ready. And the suffering continued.
It's hard to imagine that a message like "you are loved" could turn out to be a bad thing. That stone, that broken truth reminds me of the ring in The Lord of the Rings. Notice how the people hold it close to themselves, and it makes them feel good, but they think it's theirs and theirs alone. And then they fight to have it. They fight over it through the years and through the generations. But that ring in The Lord of the Rings is a ring of power, whereas this is a stone that says, "You are loved." So I think that this story tells us a particularly Unitarian Universalist message. That as Unitarian Universalists, we bristle at the idea that there is a singular truth that can be written on a stone or perhaps on 2 tablets or on the pages of a book, and then said to be the one and only truth, and that there is no truth to be found anywhere else. Or perhaps it doesn't even have to be said that way, but when we cling to a singular truth, then we close our eyes and our ears to all the beauty and wonder and teachings that are all around us. The story tells us that the breezes suffer and the streams suffer and the animals suffer, and it says most importantly, the people suffer. I don't take that to mean that the people are most important in the story, but that we, by clutching to the truth, are the ones who suffer the most because of our disconnection from each other and from other beings and from the elements of the earth that surround and support us. So, just for now, take note of this idea, this somewhat extraordinary idea that even a message such as "you are loved" can be a dangerous truth if we hold to it as the only truth and clutch it too tightly. So let's see what happens in the next part of our story. Remember, the suffering was continuing until one day a little girl came to find Old Turtle. She had traveled very far. She'd crossed mountains of imagining and the river of wondering why, had found her way through the forest of finding out, and when she had grown tired, she had ridden on the backs of animals or the wings of birds who had helped her find her way. Until finally she came to a great hill in the very center of the world, and from there the little girl thought she had never seen so far or seen so much beauty.
But when she saw Old Turtle, she could hardly speak. She simply looked with eyes full of wonder. "Why have you come so far to find me, little one?" asked Old Turtle. Her voice rumbled like faraway thunder, but was soft as the breeze through a caterpillar's whiskers. I wanted to ask a question," answered the little girl. "Where I live, the earth is sore and the people are suffering. Battles are fought over and over again. People say it has always been this way and will never change. Can it change, Old Turtle? Can we make it change?"
Old Turtle spoke. "The world you describe is not the world as it has always been, little one. And then old turtle told of how the people had found the broken truth and the suffering it had caused. It is because it is so close to a great truth, a whole truth, so close to a whole truth that it has such beauty and that the people love it so, said Old Turtle. It is the lost portion of that broken truth that the people need if the world is to be made whole again. But where is the missing piece? Asked the little girl. Can we put the truth back together again?
First, my child, said Old Turtle, remember that there are truths all around us and within us. They twinkle in the night sky and bloom upon the earth. They fall upon us every day, silent as the snow and gentle as the rain. The people, clutching to their one truth, forget that it is a part of all the small and lovely truths of life. They no longer see these truths, no longer hear them. But perhaps, little one, you can... I'll try, said the little girl.
And she thought once more of her long journey. She looked upon all the beauty that surrounded her, from the far hills to the flowers beneath her feet. She saw the movement of clouds and the soaring of birds and the dancing of light upon the green and living earth. She heard the whispering of a breeze. And gradually, a feeling came over her as though all the world were made of truths. As if the world had been made just for her and she had been made for it. And she felt a secret smile somewhere deep inside and thought that perhaps she understood. She looked once again at Old Turtle, her eyes filled with more wonder than before.
Old Turtle spoke again. Remember this, little one, she said. The broken truth and life itself will be mended only when one person meets another, someone from a different place or with a different face or different ways, and sees and hears herself. Only then will the people know that every person, every being is important, and that the world was made for each of us. For a long time then, the two friends were quiet, high on their hill in the very center of the world. And in her heart, the little girl thought she could see other people in other beautiful lands, people with their own ways, their own truths, people different from her own, but still somehow the people.
Finally, the little girl asked one more question. Old Turtle, how will the people learn these things? By seeking out those small and simple truths all around them, said Old Turtle. By listening once more to the language of breezes, by learning lessons from stones and animals and trees and stars. Even turtles, she chuckled, and little girls. Now, little one, it is time for you to go, to return to your people and tell them what you have seen and learned, and to help them mend their broken truth. Take this with you, said Old Turtle, as she placed something in the little girl's hand. I have saved it for a very long time, for someone just like you. The little girl looked at what Old Turtle had given her. It was a kind of stone, a mysterious, beautiful stone. It was lovely to touch, and it made her feel good to hold it.
She squeezed it tightly, then tucked it away for her journey. Thank you, old turtle, she said, and hugged her friend's great leathery neck. And then she started home.
Love is little like that little girl who once more traveled through the forest of finding out, crossed the river of wondering why and the mountains of imagining. Crow led the way, and again when the little girl grew tired, all her animal friends helped. She sometimes touched the stone old turtle had given her to renew her strength, and it took a long time, yet almost no time at all.
And she was home. But it had been a very long journey, and those who take great journeys of the heart are changed. The people did not recognize her, and when she spoke, they did not understand. She told them of her journey, but the people could not follow her words. She spoke of a world made of small and gentle truths, of all the peoples being one people. But they could not catch her meaning. She explained about the broken truth and the need to make it whole. But the people did not believe her and could not understand.
Finally, Crow, seeing all that had happened, flew to the high place above the village where the great truth was kept, in a place where all could see it. He cawed and cawed in his loudest voice. And suddenly, the little girl knew what to do. She climbed to the high place herself. She took old turtle's stone from her pocket and carefully added the missing piece to the old broken one.
The fit was perfect. The people looked and looked and looked. Some frowned, some smiled, some even laughed, and some cried, and they began to understand.
Do you all see? You are loved, and so are they. Time passed, and upon the beautiful land, the trees climbed like ladders to the stars. The waters shone like mirrors, and the people saw their beauty. A breeze stirred, and they heard its music. Tiny truths fell by day and night, gentle as rain and snow, and the people found them and kept them in their hearts. And slowly, as the people met other people different from themselves, they began to see in those people reflections of themselves.
And far away on a hill in the very center of the world,
Old Turtle smiled. You are loved, and so are they. By the end of the story, people are seeing the truths that are falling like rain and snow that are ever present around us. It reminds me of a creation story from Rabbi Isaac Luria. I actually shared this story in my very first time in your pulpit, which wasn't here because we were still online during the pandemic. It's a story of the creation of the world in which a holy vessel of light is traveling through the universe, and then it shatters. We don't know exactly why, but it shatters, and it scatters shards all over the universe, all over the earth. And the story tells us that our job as human beings is to find those shards scattered throughout the world, scattered in every moment, clothed in husks like seeds, and to lift up the light, to raise up the holiness, the sacredness, the hidden light and love scattered throughout the world. That is our job to do as human beings. Whew. It's not an easy job. And it's not one that we're necessarily oriented to do. I talked about this last week, but we sometimes look around and what we focus on is our discontent. We notice something and we focus on the husk. We focus on the thing that isn't right or that doesn't align with that truth that you are loved, that we, hearing that we are loved, think is the truth. But you are loved and so are they. So our work is to hear and find and see and speak the blessings all around us, to find a way to lift them up in our minds and in our hearts, and then in our actions, in how we relate to each other. It can be hard, even in simple ways. These markers, for example, they make a lot of noise. Have you noticed? In this sanctuary that really lifts up noise, that spreads sound, you have to shake them, I've noticed, to get the ink to come out. It's easy to think about the annoyance of that, and that's part of it, that's the husk. It's there, it's true. It can be hard to pay attention to what I'm saying when you're listening to these other sounds, especially if you have hearing issues or if you're neurodivergent, it might make it harder. And yet, there's also a light hidden there. There's beautiful creativity hidden there. There's joy hidden there, exploration and imagination. Every moment you hear that shake, shake, shake is a preparation for creative expression amongst you. This is not easy. As we move, our theme this month is pluralism. So the other way that this is difficult is that we are enculturated to feel like our ways of being in the world and our preferences are not just preferences, they are the way things should be. And yet, as we move into pluralistic, multicultural experiences, we have to learn and acknowledge that some people, after a piece of music is played, stay quiet. That's how you show respect. And other people, even while the music is going on, might break out into joyful shouts or claps. And one is not better than the other, but we're told that there is one way or another way to be in the world. But as we move into multicultural, pluralistic practice, we need to open to the fact that there is truth all around us, that every aesthetic has a hidden truth in it to be lifted up. I spoke last week about how the statement that we celebrate that we are all sacred beings becomes a foundation for this practice of pluralism. That if we really look around and practice seeing each other as sacred beings, then whenever something happens that isn't to our liking or breaks a code of etiquette or politeness, we should ask ourselves, what is the gift that other person is bringing? What is the gift that other way of being is bringing? I also spoke earlier this year, I said that covenant is not etiquette. I recently read an article about interrupting. I used interrupting as an example in that sermon. That in some cultures it's very rude to interrupt, but in other cultures, I have a Jewish friend who said that when she's not being interrupted, she feels like the person must not be engaged or interested in the service. They're not excited enough to have a new thought come up. And there's been new research and studies where they're even trying to call this like overlapping conversation as a way to lift it up as a potentially positive way of being. And also, it can be hard, particularly if you're a less verbal person, to hold on to your thought when someone else jumps in with their thought that was inspired by your thought. But if we start with this ground that we are all sacred beings, and that we're going to celebrate that we are diverse in culture, in experience, in theologies, then it helps us to do the next thing that our value of pluralism calls us to do, to embrace both our differences and our commonalities with love, with curiosity, and with respect. With love, with curiosity, and with respect. And when we do this, then we get to see this beautiful bouquet. Just imagine if this was a bouquet in only one color, with only one kind of flower. There's an amazing book from the science fiction and fantasy writer Ursula K. Le Guin, The Lathe of Heaven, in which a person realizes that his dreams change the world, that whatever he dreams is how the world ends up being. And he goes to see a psychologist about this because he's concerned, and the psychologist thinks, this is wonderful, we can make the world better. So he starts feeding the dreamer instructions. For example, he tells the dreamer, dream of a world where there's no racial hatred or animosity or racial disparities. And the dreamer wakes up the next morning having dreamed that all people are gray. We don't want a world of gray, or grayish even. That's gray and beige put together. Thank you, Taylor Swift, for letting me know about that word. We don't want a world of any one color. We don't want a world of all brown or all yellow or all pink. We want all the colors, all the flowers and trees, and even the cockroaches. I listened to this beautiful poem celebrating cockroaches the other day. I recommend it. All the beauty in the world has something to teach us, all the diverse ways of being. So may we practice pluralism by embracing both our commonalities and our differences with love, with curiosity, and with respect. So I want to invite, I want to just invite people, if you want to just lift up and show some of your art that you've been making. Can you just lift it up and show it briefly? And turn it towards the back as well, because there are people in front of you and behind you. Yeah. Wonderful. Images of beautiful diversity of life. So we celebrate the diversity of life. We celebrate that we are all sacred beings. And right now, we're going to celebrate Ashley Nelson Minor. So I want to invite Olivia Tuggle up, because as you all know, Ashley Nelson Miners, our Director of Spiritual Development for Children and Youth, is moving on. This is her last Sunday with us, so we're going to celebrate her right now.
Great. I'll go first. Hi, I'm Olivia Tuggle. My pronouns are she, her. Actually, I kind of need you to stand just for this part, and then you can sit back down. This is, if you're in the military, this tradition will be familiar to you. You have to stand there while I say nice things about you. First, when we met in an interview, Ashley said that she's not UU. But now that we know her a little bit better, we know that she does live by UU values. And by that I mean she recognizes the inherent worth and dignity of everyone. And she goes to a lot of meetings. So many meetings. When Ashley came, her work was cut out for her. we had a very small group of children and almost no youth coming regularly. And we also had an even smaller group of volunteers. And the office. Oh my goodness, the office. Yeah.
It's pretty bad.
And that's not a criticism of Allie. This was mostly because we didn't have a DSD for about 6 months, I think. Yeah.
And the pandemic.
And the pandemic. Wait, was that in, we were already in person by then. Yeah. Started to come back. So lots of work and lots of help that really needed. I think what we got from Ashley is what we really needed is a fresh pair of eyes to look at, the changes with the pandemic. We kind of had to change the way we operate. And we also had a lot of policies that, as an administrator and as a teacher, she saw a lot of things that we could possibly improve and gave us some challenges to do better. She also suggested ways to simplify the lessons with the new research about how children actually learn more from their parents than they do from Sunday school. So this is why our amazing Time for All Ages were so impactful, because we wanted parents to have something to talk about with their children as maybe when you're driving home, because you have something in common, a common experience. And also, like half the time, you need to have like a tissue. You know what I mean? You need like a tissue disclaimer. Pull it out because she's going to read a good one. One of my favorite things, and I think this is why our children and youth groups began to get bigger, is Ashley has a very kind nature and very kind demeanor. And I think that really was welcoming to a lot of people. And I think that's one of the reasons why our group grew to the size where we actually may have to separate the youth and the children because it's so big. And I think that's has something to do with you. Thank you. I'll make it short. It was a joyful experience to have you, and you will be missed.
Thank you so much, Olivia.
We have a few
mutual.
things. Oh, more books.
Oh, cool. I love
Hopefully
books.
you don't just leave them.
No.
This one, I have a weird hobby.
Oh my
where
goodness.
it's-
How cool is that?
created a romance writer textbook, and it has your
Wow.
name and also your husband's name.
Oh my God, I love it. Thank you.
I'm not sure, I just want to make people are hearing it online. Since
Oh,
you're,
yes.
Yeah.
So mutilated a romance novel to make this beautiful work of art in a book.
I love it. Thank you so
And
much.
This is from the rest of this spiritual development committee. Yet another
Oh,
book.
thank you. Awesome. Can I open it a little
Oh,
later?
yeah,
Or yeah, and I don't want to
Oh.
damage this in any way because I know I'm going to treasure that. Thank
If you
you.
really want to read it, you can unfold it.
Ashley, are you going to make Olivia stand up here
Yes.
as well?
Now, you have to
shoe's on the
stand.
other foot
yeah.
now.
So, all right. Okay. Well, here I am again. So I'd like to share what an amazing experience I've had as the DSD over the last year and a half with you all at Accotink UU. I have literally learned so much from each one of you. Each of you individually and as a whole brings something wonderful to Accotink and our community. I will forever remember the camaraderie of Accotink to be passionate and to take action in little and big ways, to advocate for others and to serve to make our world a better, more loving, accepting, safe, and diverse place for all. I have learned in greater depth what it means to embrace one another wholeheartedly in all of our differences and experiences, in all of our diversity. For this, I believe, is both the struggle and the call of humanity. Thank you to all of the children and youth and adults for your kindness, encouraging words, and sharing who you are with me. So I want to recognize first Olivia Tuggle today. Olivia, you have made this experience to be both a fun and productive time for me. Your kindness, laughter, easygoing style, enthusiasm to serve others, and your friendship has been incredibly special to me. So thank you so much. I love you. Thank you. So I'd also like to recognize Nancy Davis and Anna Meredith. If you all could come up here, please. Okay. So I don't know how many of you know this, but Nancy has spent countless hours working on our children's library, which we hope to have up and running sometime this summer. Nancy, you've been an inspiration and a source of great encouragement to me. And I want to thank you for your kindness and your professionalism and all the good that you bring to the Accotink children and youth. Thank you. Okay, Anna has spent many hours of her free time helping me in lots of ways, from organizing the storage closets downstairs last summer. She spent a good 8 to 10 hours with me last summer doing just that, with a smile on her face, and to being responsible for helping in multiple ways to organize and enter data for our children's library. Thank you, Anna, for all that you've given and you continue to give us. What's that? I have to read the titles of the books? Okay. And last but not least, I'd like to thank Rev Lev. Stand up.
You didn't tell me you were going to thank me.
No, I did.
You kept that part secret.
I kept it quiet. So to say that I've grown both professionally and personally from knowing you would be an understatement. From making me get more comfortable being crafty at multi-gens, to understanding people, myself, and the world around me. Your drive to help people and make yourself and the world a better, more loving, accepting, safe, and diverse place is an inspiration to me. And this insight I will take with me to make myself better and give to the world, in the hopes of making it a more loving, accepting, safe, and diverse place. You have taught me the role of community and the power of love within community. So thank you.
Apparently you have to read those book titles.
Okay. And here.
So as you get the books out, we're about to do our flower communion. So we're going to do it the same way. We're going to file down and then around. But this time, you're going to take a flower. I'm going to pause there so we can hear the book titles.
We are grateful. And thank you, Poems of Gratitude. Thank you. I love it.
So just as we celebrated the gifts that Ashley has given to this community, and then she turned around and shared the gifts that she has received from this community, when you come and take a different flower from the one you placed in the vase, it's going to take a little while to do that presentation. Think about what gifts you bring to this community, and I want you to think about what you receive from others in this community, so that this can be a ritual of gratitude and celebration.
Now that we've gathered together in this welcoming and inclusive spiritual home, let us go out into the world nourished, rejuvenated, and inspired to share our values.